books, and we're hosting Kate Akyuz.
Akyuz.
Akyuz. I heard it last night.
Like the French, Akyuz.
She is running Mercer Island Council City Position 6. We appreciate everyone being here in the room. We have about 12 people, and we have 21 people on the chat. I'm going to answer questions on the chat as they come up. If they are answered in the room, I will let that person know that it's been answered, but we will try to get to everyone's question. Kate is going to monitor the questions in the room. We ask that everyone be kind. We are a bookstore that believes in peace and civility, so we want everyone to be kind and know that it's not easy to sit in that chair and answer these questions. So again, thank you everyone for coming. Welcome, Kate, and the time is now yours to begin as you want.
Oh, first of all, thank you so much, Victor and Lori, for hosting this. It's a lot of work on your end, and this is an island institution. Everyone loves it. Everyone feels welcome here, and I just really, really appreciate that. We have a couple of forums that are very formal, and you know, I don't know if anyone watched the League of Women's Voters last night, but it's 30 seconds. It's like lightning round, you know, and it's tough to really. You don't get to ask a follow-up question. So if I don't answer something, we'll stick with you and make sure that we can have a quick follow-up on that if you need any clarification on anything. And I'll try to be scanning left and right. I'm a little bit pointed right, so if I miss you, just holler. And I guess with that, you know, I could give a big preamble. I think most of the people here know who I am. I'm Kate. I'm running for City Council Position 6. I decided to run because mainly I'm an urban forester by training, and I would like to see us do more with our urban forest parkland. I would love it if we could have a conservancy that's island-wide, not just in Pioneer Park. I think it's a great way to leverage partnership funding. You know, I feel like they're pretty understaffed right now. We have 300 acres of forested parkland, and there's only 1 3/4 time employee. And I think we could do a little more focus on that. And when I say 3/4 time employee, that's just for the trees. There's another one, but he focuses on trails. So there's 2 3/4 time people for the forested parklands. I think we can do a little bit better. And I think if we had a conservancy, that would be a great way to do that. The other big concern to me is Mercer Island Youth and Family Services. I saw a lot of kids really kind of start flailing when the funding got cut off for that in the pandemic. And I'd really like to see them have the city itself have a reserve fund for that that's a little more substantial. The foundation has a substantial reserve fund and was able to step in and help out. But it would be great if the city could kind of have that fiscal responsibility like the foundation does and have a backup plan. Because when you have something like a pandemic and everything's shutting down, you know, we're in earthquake country. We have a huge earthquake fault line. We're going to have natural disasters. We're going to have diseases. There's going to be emergencies. That's when kids and seniors, the people that rely on MIYFS most, need them the most. We need them every day, but we don't want to lose that. We don't have that big gap in coverage again. I have a lot of other issues too, but those are the 2 really big ones to me. And I'd rather just have time for your questions. So fire away. Who wants to go first?
I have a couple here. I'm happy to say. Gail Elena Morrison wants to know, what is your vision for revitalizing the town center?
Yeah, I think we have a really big opportunity in front of us with town center, especially with the purchase of the Tully's property. Light rail was coming. I know there's a lot of concern about safety. The city's hired 2 new police officers to patrol that area, and I think that will give us some really good data on what kind of uptick in activity we have there. And we can use that in part to help plan how we want to engage with Sound Transit, how much of a portal into downtown we want to make that. I really, really like the idea. I think Celine Meese said it last night that you could have an officer station there, like a little substation. And I am a big fan of having a social services connection to police and fire. And what I'd love to see is kind of like a community outreach, you know, that outreach person could be stationed there with the police. And so City Hall is not super accessible to a lot of people, especially if they live in the apartments. You know, we've got a lot of seniors living alone in the apartments. If they could just have a walk-up shop where they can connect with a city outreach worker, I think that would be fantastic. Seattle used to fund those neighborhood centers, and they don't anymore. And they were really loved by the neighborhoods because it was a good way to get in touch with the city. So I'd love to see, sound transit, and then, I mean, it's coming. I know some people don't want it to come, but it's coming. And then, you have this like a big Tully's opportunity. And if we could have that station there and then transition into the downtown. And I said something in the League of Women Voters talk last night about unbuilding. So in my job, we do restoration and it's floodplain restoration. So sometimes we put levees where they don't need to be, they're in harm's way, and we spend a lot of money repairing them. And we realize that it's actually cheaper to buy out the home and set back the levee. And that's great for flood protection. It gets the owner out of harm's way. And it's great for salmon habitat. Well, they're multi-benefit projects. So in my experience, concrete structures, you don't want to go peeling up downtown every 5 minutes. But there's always an opportunity to shift. It's not necessarily set in stone. So there's an opportunity through that Tully's corridor to make a more pedestrian friendly entry. I think a lot of people in the community are very concerned about how that would happen. And we have lots of things in our comprehensive plan, lots of little bits of like storefronts look like this, but we don't have that big picture vision, and we have this kind of square grid layout. And I think, having that plaza and the transition from the light rail, and then if we could have some sort of a pedestrian, even like a promenade or something connecting into all the other businesses, I think that would be neat. And more walkthroughs. So some of these blocks don't have, I've seen that in comp plan as a concept. I'd love to see more walkthroughs, and you're not walking through a parking lot to get from place to place. So that's not great. That's not a great way for kids to get from storefront to storefront, or people, kids and adults alike.
Okay, I'm going to go with another one. This is from Jane Reynolds. The question for you: what role should the city play in addressing climate change?
I think we have a lot of. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Wait. Oh, she has a question from online.
Right.
Oh, okay. The question was, what role should the city play in climate change? Addressing climate change. Okay. Well, I think the city's done a lot of great things. Green power that you can opt in to pay for with utility. Converting, encouraging, incentivizing people to convert from gas to electric. That's a big thing. Trees. We've got a lot of open space that people don't want built up. And I think we could forest some more of those. There's a lot of land that could be converted from grass to trees, especially on the edges of heavily used areas. There's parts that aren't heavily used. So I think just taking an inventory of those and thinking like, where can we plant more trees? The other thing I think that's just really imperative is we have to take care of our urban forests. I work for the City of Seattle Parks Department, and through the Green Seattle Partnership, and helped build up that program. And that program relied heavily on volunteers, contractors, AmeriCorps programs. And I think we could like integrate a little bit more of that activity. I would love to see the city have an AmeriCorps program to get our kids, our kids can participate in that and really get engaged with the city and invested in our urban forests. I think, our last mile is really tough. Getting, if people are going to take light rail, if they choose to do that, getting to and from there is tough, and parking is really tough. And I've noticed a huge uptick in e-bikes. I think we could have a little bit more bike friendly infrastructure, at least getting to the center, like mid-island from downtown. And that would encourage people, to get out of their cars, and, electrical vehicle charging stations, bike lockers, things like that, I think would be helpful.
There's a question that kind of taps onto that. I'm sorry, raise your hands, yell. If I could just.
I'll holler if I see someone.
We'll go to you. In your intro, you talked a lot about items you would like the city to add: increased employees for trail open space, bigger reserve, social outreach worker. How do you propose to pay for those ideas?
Well, we did have a surplus this year. There've been some. Oh, sorry.
It's right here. I'll read it because it's right here to me.
Have her read it so she's reading
So the
Okay.
question is, you're asking for a lot of stuff. How are you going to pay for it? Social outreach worker, another parks
Open
worker,
space.
open space. So that's, I think, one of the reasons to have a conservancy. If you think about the model of Mercer Island Youth and Family Services, the foundation kind of saved our bacon a little bit in the pandemic. They have the ability to raise funds, they have the ability to tap into other money. If we did have a conservancy, it would be an opportunity for people like me who really care about this issue to donate regularly. And a lot of people have matching funds from their employees, and that would escalate our community donation. If the conservancy is a nonprofit, that's great. And it can also apply to grants and things like that that maybe municipalities aren't able to apply for. Because there's some grants that as a city you can apply for, but that as a nonprofit or private organization you can. So part of funding that would be a conservancy. As far as outreach worker goes, this is a trend that's going across King County, across the cities, is that our police and fire really need social service workers. And I just think it should be part of their budget. They're acting as social workers a lot of the time and having repeat visits. What I've heard, from police and fire is that, we have a lot of seniors in our community. There tends to be some hoarding problems and things like that. And that can be a fire hazard. And the fire folks are going to same houses over and over again. It would be great if they could hand that as a case off to a social worker. And so I don't think a social outreach worker. And we also have domestic violence on the island, and there's been an uptick in the pandemic. I don't know if it's been an uptick locally, but across King County, there's been an uptick in domestic violence. And again, we have a big senior population, and the biggest victims of domestic violence are seniors. We tend to think about it as being a problem that mainly impacts, women and children, but seniors have a big problem with that, even from care workers. So if we could have, kind of this outreach case worker that could deal with homeless cases and others, I think it should be just a basic part of the budget for police and fire. Sure. Tom Acker has a question.
Lori, can I speak?
Oh, yeah, she's in charge of your.
She said
Okay.
she said
I
I can
didn't
ask you
know.
questions.
Yeah, I'm only in charge of
We're
it.
tag teaming.
Last night you made a comment, I think you just addressed it right now, and I'm talking loud enough, so hopefully you don't have to repeat it. There are two things. One, I'm curious why you did not support the homeless restrictive ban on camping in the parks and in public spaces. So what was your logic there? And then two, last night you made a comment that you wanted a social worker to be hired. You were just talking about that, I think a little bit on the periphery, but can you be more specific about what you would see that individual do? Is it just access, help them bridge the gap between the encounter and regional services? Or what did you see that person do?
Sure thing. So there's two questions there. I'll take the first part first. I may have used some strong language about the homelessness ordinance. I was not against it, and I did not sign the petition to delay the ordinance. And I think that has been mischaracterized on social media, and I think that's really unfair. I did say I was for no camping in parks several times. I said I thought we should add sidewalks and all public property several times. What I did not like, I was not opposed to the ordinance, I was opposed to the process, and I was opposed to the content. So the first draft that came out of the ordinance had a lot of language about addiction that was just medically inaccurate and frankly offensive to people who have had to deal with mental health issues or addiction in their family. And it was stated almost as though it was a choice. And I really didn't like that. I also didn't like that it appeared to have been conceived behind closed doors. And, Lisa Enderl made a post the other day that kind of showed the first draft was. I don't think that's how good policy is made. I think that the general public should be able to kind of participate in the process. These social issues, I think they need a long lead time, because what I saw happening with the ordinance was that people were sniping at each other online. Like the next door machine was going, and both sides just saying really awful things to each other. And I thought that could have been avoided. There would have been some of that, but it could have been avoided if people felt like they had an opportunity to participate in the process and maybe shape a little bit of it. And one of the things that I think people would have really liked to see was a little more emphasis on the city itself investing in things like a social worker to bridge services. And so the idea that I came up with, and I'll segue into that a little bit from your question, but to get to the second part of your question.
Can you just clarify that you support the ordinance with the final draft?
I thought that there could have been one amendment. I've talked to Councilmember Reynolds about this. I thought there was a little too much there. You know, he asked for several amendments. What I would really like to have seen there is that the community had some time to digest it and comment, and that the council could have, and I think they should have, worked together. Because there's a couple things that to me we're missing, like addressing root cause. You know, we can't address the root causes of homelessness by ourselves as a city, but we sure as heck can lobby the state. And so we have a legislative agenda, but we don't have like a group of council members marching down to Olympia once a quarter saying, we need to talk about this issue. And that's how you get the state or the Fed to move. I've been in government long enough to know that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And it shouldn't be on citizens, like, or residents, I should say, to push for that all the time. I talked to Lisa Wellman, you know, she's like, people aren't coming to me. Every single city except Mercer Island is
I
coming.
think I got the answer. I don't
Okay.
want to waste all your time on my question.
Well, I think people have the same question, but that's okay. You know, we should be lobbying for these things. So what I was hoping for the ordinance, an amendment that I would have liked to have seen were 1 or 2 aspirational goals. Like the city will work with police and fire and MIYFS to see if we can't house a position on outreach, or if that's even just asking, is that an appropriate thing to do? And then the other thing I would have liked to have seen is the city council commits in this ordinance to lobbying the state to fix the gaping holes in mental health care. And the problem is if the ordinance is being legislated on next door, that's not good. We need to sit down and talk to each other, because otherwise we're just talking past each other.
The state has been closing down all institutions. And, you know, they're not a voting public, so they don't seem to care because they've closed down 3 or 4 institutions where some of these people focus. So, you know, everything that was working has been taken away. So, you know, I don't see how Mercer Island's going to fix something when the state is turning them off, you know, closing them down. And you mentioned something else about town center. It's been 27 years since we first had our village master plan that everybody liked. A few years ago, have you ever read that letter from Dave Weinsteiner?
Weisentiner?
Yeah.
Wiesentiner. Sorry, Dave, if you watch.
Have you had a chance to read that letter?
I have
It was
not.
sent to City council.
Yeah, I'd love
It's
it if you
very
could forward it to
enlightening
me.
about the way our city's been run.
Mhm.
We had hundreds and hundreds of input from everybody up on the island about what they wanted, and the city council ignored it. He was completely upset about how that was handled. And we've had a lot of special interests that has almost bankrupt our city. So these things that you're talking about are great, but you can't spend money on special interest and have money left over for the services that people want. So how would you address that?
I guess I would,
Yeah.
well, I was gonna ask him to paraphrase it because there's a lot there. And if he paraphrases it for me, then I'll further paraphrase it for the audience at home. I'm trying to understand the question. So I heard Dave.
I'm just asking if you read
Wiesentiner.
the letter.
I didn't read the letter. I would love to read the letter. I have asked Chamber of Commerce folks, you know, they've talked about these processes, and I've heard that there are renderings. And I've asked people, and if anyone in this room has one, I would love to see it. we need a vision and we need community collaboration on that. And it sounds like what Dave was upset about was that there was a vision articulated and agreed upon, that it wasn't implemented.
Well, it just was ignored. And it was ignored a couple of times, starting back in the 90s, all the way to what's happening here in the super block, with no parking, a restaurant about 1,000 square feet. It's a mess.
Okay, that's all true, but what's your question?
I think the question is like, how are you gonna, so what, I think we need some healing in this community. Like a lot of healing on that topic. And I have heard from a lot of people the same thing, that they felt not heard, that they felt ignored. And I think part of the problem is that, and again, I've asked for the renderings if there are any, is that in order to really understand what you mean when you say this and what you mean when you say this, is that you have to have an actual picture, an actual drawing, an actual, bird's eye view, street view of the big picture. Because what I see happening right now is we are being very, very reactive. Developers are coming to us with a proposal and we're saying, we don't like it. That's not a good position to be in because they've already invested a lot of money in this. I was reading from the farmers insurance building a letter to the city saying, if you don't, we're responding to your code. You wrote the code and we've got a takings issue on our hands. I'm very concerned that if we don't express this vision and work proactively with the development community to get what we want, articulated on the ground, that we're going to continue looping through this in this reactive mode. And so, my brother's a commercial, somebody mentioned something on the internet about having money from real estate people. I'm like, yeah, my brother's a broker, his friends donated, I don't know them. I don't work with them from day to day. They're just friends of the family. These are people I've known for 20 years, but I also get to pick their brains and I got to ask them. And I asked them, what is going on here? Why can't we get what we want? And, what they've told me is you have to work cooperatively. So a lot of these little town centers, Kirkland, and I know a lot of people don't like Kirkland, but maybe that's a bad example, Totem Lake. There's some other ones that are a little smaller. The city approached the development community and said, we want from this block to this block, this is how we want it to look. And this is how our residents want it to feel. And they got better responses. So I just think we need to be more proactive. I think we need to articulate our vision graphically on a zoomed out scale. And then I think we need to work proactively with the development community to get what we want.
Mercer Island elections, city council elections are nonpartisan. You're endorsed by the 41st Democratic District. Our legacy council was endorsed by the 41st Democratic District. And they did great harm and cost the city greatly by their actions. In a nonpartisan election, why would you inject partisanship into it? How can we count on you to be independent when we're beholden to a district that's endorsing it?
I think that's a great question. I think it's a fair question. Oh, sorry. The question, okay, paraphrasing. How are you not going to be the 41st district's lackey? Is that what I'm hearing? If they endorse you and all these people who are Democrats endorse you, how are you not going to be beholden to them? Well, okay, I'm new to running for office. When I came to this process, I was told very early, you cannot run effectively without having an organization endorse you, because Mercer Island on the more conservative side has Mercer Islanders for Sustainable Spending, and it's a very strong organization. And they have supported candidates with money, doing advertising and things like that. I work for the government. I'm not wealthy. I'm not going to self-fund my campaign. And so I listened to that advice, and I had never, ever met anyone who operates in the 41st district before deciding to run for office. I might have met people through my casual life, but I didn't know like this whole 41st district machine, the Mercer Island for Sustainable Spending machine. Like to me, it's like, okay, it's almost like the Republican Party proxy. I know some people are going to say that's not fair, but the person who runs it is a very strong Republican, and so you can't show up to what is it, a gunfight with a knife. You know, you have to have some support. And I am a lifelong Democrat. I donate money every month to Planned Parenthood from my paycheck. You know, I have strong Democratic values, but I have been working in public process almost all of my career. And I have been given very difficult projects over and over again because I am capable of listening to people who have different opinions, and I'm capable of bringing them together. And I just, I don't think it's fair. A lot of the comments that have been made online, I don't think it's fair to take someone who's new to the game and say, you're a 41st puppet. I just don't think that's fair. And I think we can be kinder to each other about this. I didn't sell anyone my soul. Nobody owns me. I wish I knew some of you better because I'm a very strong, independent person. And I'm not going to not have your concerns heard. And I think both parties have gotten much too extreme on topics. I've talked to people at the council about this too. King County Council is not supposed to be partisan. Raise your hand if you believe that anyone on King County Council isn't either Republican or Democrat with Republican or Democratic backing. Being nonpartisan, it is just extremely difficult to do politically these days. There's 3 Republicans on the King County Council, right? And so you've got to get money from somewhere. And if you're not rich, like I'm not rich, you're not going to self-fund. And what really bothers me about this race, and I ran for an open seat thinking I wouldn't have to raise that much money and I wouldn't have to be so dependent on other people. But when Lisa brought the fight to me, it's like, okay, I guess that stakes have been up. Lisa, my race is the most expensive, I think, in Mercer Island City Council history. Her race against Patrick cost $20,000 total between the 2 of them. This one, we're already at 80. I think that's nuts. And I think a lot of it is because of misunderstandings, mistrust, things like that. And we need to heal and we need to build up. And I hope that I can demonstrate that to you through my service. I don't expect you to trust me immediately. I don't expect you to believe me immediately. But there are a lot of issues that I think we'll have common ground on. There's been a lot of complaints about like, some of these Democratic organizations want to defund the police. Kate wants to defund the police. She's best friends with Kashama Sawant. That's nonsense. I don't even know that woman. She does not endorse me. And every single political questionnaire, I'm going to pause for a little phone turn off. That's just fine. Every single political questionnaire, almost every single one had a question about defunding the police. And on every single one, I said no. So if I was so beholden to every single uber progressive value, I honestly didn't think I was going to get the Democrat endorsement. And because I work with police officers, I've worked with the King County Sheriffs for 12 years, and I know they are good men. And I'm saying men because all the ones that I've worked with are men. It's the river crew, and we had one lady once and had a terrible boating accident, and she didn't come back. But I would say, please be fair to me. I will listen to you. And some of these complaints that are being made about, attributing certain extreme ends of a party's beliefs to me, that's not fair because that's not who I am. Every single man in my family, except one of my brothers, has served in the military. I mean, we're good people and we listen and we care.
Okay, there's a question that tags on to that in the chat. Says you have mentioned on a couple of occasions that we will be surprised to hear you hold some conservative views. Can you share with us a couple of examples of those and what that statement means to you?
What that statement means to me. Well, I think
you could repeat the question.
Sorry. You've said, so the question was, I'm going to try to paraphrase this. You've said a couple times that you'd be surprised by some of my more conservative views. Explain what that means to us. So I think the police one is a great example. I continue to hear people say you're either for Black Lives Matter or you're for the police. And I think that I think that's kind of nonsense. I have a lot of friends with Black and brown skin, and I have a lot of friends and colleagues who are police officers. And you don't have to pick whether or not you support a social justice movement or whether you support law enforcement. They are not mutually exclusive. So I think that people have put law enforcement as a conservative value. And I think that's probably what I meant when I said that, but I don't think it's a conservative value. Everybody wants safe parks. I haven't talked to one single person on Mercer Island that wants camping on public property. Not one person. What they want is they want some of these bigger picture issues. They want the city to lobby for them, and they want them to consider a little more investment for social outreach for police and fire. And so, and you know, I've talked to the chief, the fire chief, I've talked to the police chief, and I'm pretty sure they want that too. So again, you know, I think we are attributing, if somebody says they're a Democrat, or if somebody says they're a Republican, or someone says they're independent, it's just this social media thing where we've been kind of taught to like look at the extremes, you know, and anytime somebody tells you they're one thing, you think, oh, well, then you're all this and you're all that. We're all, most of us, pretty in the middle. So I guess when I say more conservative, I mean, I am not like on this end of the Democratic Party. And that's why I said I was trying to have a little levity when I put out that FAQs, like Shamus Want is definitely not inviting me to a dinner party, you know, and I think that's pretty true. And then the other way I'm conservative is, and this has been represented on social media as well, is single family housing. You know, there's a big push at a lot of state levels and in a lot of cities to, at the state level, get rid of the single family zone. And I'm totally against that, not only for community reasons, but for environmental reasons. You know, we can't just we can't keep growing and growing and growing. And where does it end? Once you fill up this island, what are you gonna, then you have to go out, you know, we have to figure out population growth in our region. And there's so from ecology, we have this concept called carrying capacity. And that's how much land does it take to support one animal on the land? And a lot of people would argue we are well beyond the carrying capacity of the globe and the country and even our state. So we need to have a little bit of a coming to God about that. You know, we can't have endless population growth. So I would definitely push back, you know, about any sort of change to single family zoning. And that's been mischaracterized. And then the other thing I want to say about that is the other reason I think very strongly we need to get our act together and lobby at the state level. There are other cities east of Seattle, usually, and there's a lot of people who live in Seattle neighborhoods who want this too, but don't want to see single family zoning change. So we need to get together with other cities and lobby hard together to address these issues. There's a question from Matt in the
Yes.
audience.
One at a time.
Okay.
Specifically, the Democrats that support you support changing the residential codes. Specifically those people, exactly. I voted for them. How do you feel about it? I mean, where do you stand on that? Is it your support? People are supporting you.
So the question was, there are people that support you that want to see
State representatives.
state representatives that want to see zoning change.
They've actually voted for it. So,
Yeah, no, I know that. And I am supported by people who I am not 100% in alignment with their beliefs on some things. For example, the new state laws, police accountability, as it's being called, laws, you know, I think it was really not great that came out without the use of force policy really clearly defined. There's like no officer that wants to even make contact on a mental health case now because that policy has not been clearly defined. So I have asked about that, and I have had difficult conversations with people about that. And I think that's something that is really important for us as people, is to quit getting so entrenched in party politics, because then you waste a lot of time and a lot of energy not reaching the middle ground. And so I think, you know, having been a facilitator for a lot of stakeholder processes and getting people to hear each other, I think that's a skill that I hope I can bring to council.
I guess I guess it's important for you to be very clear on these matters, because again, you being on our council and having been endorsed by the people that actually have already voted for these things, will be very detrimental to our lifestyle here. I think it's important that you are very clear about that, because somebody to vote for you, in essence, they're voting for that.
You know, I hear what you're saying. So the comment or the follow-up comment is, if someone's voting for you, they're voting on the, if you don't have a record, then they're going to rely, I'm going to paraphrase, I think what I'm channeling here, they're going to rely on the record of people who endorsed you to assume how you would vote. And I can understand, especially when I'm hearing some really tough feelings about the previous council, which I wasn't on. And people, and it's true, people are getting entrenched in party politics, but I am not that person. And I am very happy to push back on things. You can ask Stephen, who's hiding up there, my partner. You can ask my boss. I'm a tough cookie, and I'm not going to be bowled over by somebody demanding something. And I think we have to, I think in order for people to like, you know, a lot of people are like, you're brave to do this. You know, why are you doing this? It's not something, because we have to stop making these massive assumptions about each other. And we all do it. I do it. Other people do it, you know, and how do we move past that? You know?
Difficult, because say, these are the people that are backing you.
Mhm.
Right? You've accepted their support.
Yes.
We have to accept, that once elected,
Yep.
you're going to go the other direction.
Well, I don't think it's go the other direction so much as I don't have to be aligned with 100% of things that anyone who supports me is aligned with. I am. Wait, there's another question, sorry, but can I get to you next, Ashley? Because I want to finish answering his question. So for example, Neela and Ty, she's probably, you know, for some things that you might not be for. I am not, I am not 100% aligned with Neela and Ty, but that woman has a heart of gold. And, you know, she is looking at things from the refugee perspective, and I think she's a wonderful person. I think what she's doing for kids is amazing. I think she's very interested in having beginning of stream services, you know, where you are addressing problems at the pre-K level. You know, Dal Constantine, I love Best Starts for Kids, because what we were doing with these adult social problems like homelessness and stuff, we were trying to slap Band-Aids on a sucking chest wound. You know, we need to, of course, we need to address these, and, you know, shelters are one of the many tools to do that. But we need to address these beginning of stream services. And from that refugee experience, Lynn knows that, you know, and so I respect her experience, but I am not going to agree with her on 100% of things, because I'm coming from my experience, you know, I grew up in the suburbs. I grew up in Browns Point. I went to Bellarmine Prep in Tacoma, you know, I'm a suburban person from origin, right? So, you know, I just think I can understand the concern. And again, it sounds like there's a lot of trust issues, and I probably don't get to earn your vote this time. I'm pretty sure about that. I think a lot of people in this room are very heavily invested in Lisa Andro. But if I do win, and if I am your council member, I hope that I can earn your trust through my actions. That's all I can say, you know, because I can't change your mind, right? Hi, Ashley.
Might not agree with all of the positions of your endorsers. So, but I do want to really be clear and have an answer on what you're calling the police accountability, which is actually police reform. And we heard law enforcement speak out against this before it was adopted. We heard them say, do this with us, not to us. And your endorsers pushed this through, and it was adopted. And so now we have it. So I think we do want to know a clear answer whether you support this or not. And if you don't support this, what would you do about that on the local level to make some progress going forward?
So the one thing that, so I think a lot of the police accountability or police reform, laws, it's officers that have said to me police accountability laws. The police reform laws were necessary because there have been bad apples, and Chief Holmes, you know, he's like a beacon of light. He has done and he has implemented most of the things that are in those accountability laws. It's not a big change for him. The one big change for him is the use of force policy and how to interpret that. And, city of Sammamish, other cities around, they're really, really struggling with this as well. And people don't know what to do. And no department and no police officer wants to be the first test case for that. And that just seems like a lot of pressure and really unfair. So what I would do is I would communicate with our state legislators. And that's why, I think it's really important to work with them as well and be a bridge, and be a bridge. So Chief Holmes and I actually have some friends in common. It turns out my coworker, Shikande, his mother, Reverend Harriet Walden, she has actually done training for the Mercer Island Police Department. And I think it would be fantastic to have, Shikande and his mom come do a community presentation. Because Shikande is a boy, he's a very big Black man and very proud, and we work together in the city of Seattle. And, he wasn't thrilled when Carmen Best got treated so badly. You have to bring people together to talk. And it sounds like that didn't happen to the degree that everyone would have liked to have happened. I do know they did talk to a lot of departments. They did talk to a lot of officers. And there are some department heads are saying this change was needed. So I think we can't say all police didn't want this. And I think we can't say that, every Democrat is anti-police or wants to defund the police. There's a lot of middle ground. There's a lot of people with different feelings and opinions on this. So let's find that common ground and work from there and build from there. Tom Ecker has a question.
I'm just, first of all, thank you for coming and putting yourself out in this forum. I'm reflecting on some of your earlier answers around the negativity of campaigning and so forth. And, part of that's just the name of the game. Been through it twice. The question that I have is that with social media, it's out there, and without it, this community would have a 3-story parking garage in Burbank. We have the Heinz building. It would be horrible for the island. All the retail would have been decimated by now with the giveaways. And I hear you talk negatively about the social media and also say that you want to increase communication with the community. You want open dialogue and transparency. And then I just saw somebody send something out that you have been flagging posts on Nextdoor, kind of shutting people down on Nextdoor, and you don't want to see their feedback out there. And I'm wondering, as a candidate, how does that reflect in your leadership and your theme of trying to create a transparent environment?
I think that there have been a lot. Oh, sorry. So what Tom is saying, if I can paraphrase and tell me if I get this wrong, is that if transparency is important and social media seems to be the way that we're communicating about it the most, why would you do things like flag someone's post? What does that say about you as a transparent person? So I really, really, really struggled with whether or not to get on Nextdoor at all. And I think that the only reason I did, against the advice of my campaign manager and 100% of my friends, was because we have this trust problem, and any post that I flagged is something that said factually inaccurate information. If somebody said, Kate wants to defund the police, I ran the risk of not being endorsed by my own party by clicking that, no, we don't defund the police. In fact, our police department doesn't have enough money. We have candidates that are turning us down. We have young candidates that are leaving for better salaries. Why would I, and our police department is acting well, and then they're like, okay, we'll go out to the macro level. Okay, well, maybe some other departments aren't that great, and I think that was why that legislation was pushed. So I'm not going to be a pushover, and I'm not going to let people say things about me that are not true. And I don't want my friends, I've told my friends, don't get into it, don't get online. I don't want you getting hurt, because it hurts when people say things about you that are not true. It hurts your heart, So if somebody says, and then also there's a lot of just excessive new posts about the same thing over and over and over again. And how many times do I have to say, I do not want to defund the police? How many times do I have to say that? because people keep making new posts with it or adding it to a post that's on another topic. So, I'd rather dive deep into the issues. How are we going to do town center? If we can have a police substation as like the thing that goes between sound transit and brings you into town center, what do we want that to look like? And how are we going to get there? I would rather have that conversation than play whack-a-mole with 400 posts saying you want to defund the police when I've already declared for the record, and it's available. The questionnaires are available. You can see what my answers were, right? And so of course I'm going to flag that because I don't want my friends to have to go in there and babysit me. It's not right. So, if you don't want me to flag stuff, then folks maybe could stop repeating stuff that isn't true and bringing up the same thing over and over. It's election. I know it's everyone's prerogative to do what they want. And if I do get elected, no hard feelings. We start from scratch, we build trust.
You don't necessarily answer questions.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that? Somebody on the chat has a follow-up question about Nextdoor.
Okay.
And I'm sorry. There are questions about your previous Nextdoor post. Can you address the issue of whether you deleted your comments, and if you did, why you did that?
So after the last election, my family was getting a lot of,
Can you?
oh,
can
sorry,
you
the
repeat that?
question was, am I repeating it for here? Am I repeating it for that? Oh, okay. So the question was, why did you delete your post? And if you did, why? I deleted my entire account after the last election. And it was because I was having people give veiled threats indicating they knew where I lived. We have 4 children in our house. And I was like, this has gotten really toxic. And I don't want to, it's not good for me to engage in this. It's not healthy for me to engage in these conversations. I'm out. I had absolutely no desire, no interest, no want to run for council at that time. It was 2 years ago. I have not deleted a single post. I went back onto Nextdoor again because of trust issues. I'm like, I'm not going to sit on the sidelines and let other people talk for me. I'm going to get in there myself and answer questions because I want to build trust with people who I know from the gate are not going to trust me. So this is another thing. Someone asked about if I had, why was I flagging posts? Because people keep saying I'm deleting comments. I am not deleting any comments. 100% of the things I said about the homelessness ordinance are up there, unless someone else reported it and it got pulled down. So, everything I've stated since I reinstated my account, and they delete everything. If you delete your account, everything gets deleted.
Deleted your record. You deleted your record in the sense that.
At the time, it wasn't a record, though. I'm a private citizen.
I understand.
Yeah.
You're running for office now.
I am running for office now, and I kind of wish I could get it back. Maybe some of the things I said, I wish I couldn't get it back, but it's not like an intentional, like I didn't go through, an old thing and go, oh, I better sanitize this and sanitize that. I'll do my best to be honest about anything I said before, but no one has a perfect memory. A lot of people are suggesting I said things that I think are kind of interesting, but how can I respond to that? There's no rational response to that.
My previously was, you don't answer all the questions. Nobody can answer all the questions that are asked. Specifically, the ones I asked, you can answer. That's what I'd like to ask. You mentioned that you were endorsed by the Alliance for Gun Responsibility, as was Salim.
Yeah.
You stated that Salim had also taken a contribution from him, as you did. So I showed that post. But anyway.
Yeah, no, I think you shared that post. So if that was an error, oh, sorry. The question was, you said you and Celine both got endorsed by this organization, and you said you both took checks. So if I misspoke there, I haven't spoken to Celine about this. I'd be happy to retract the statement. I didn't ask them for money. They sent me a check. I assumed, and we all know what assuming does. I assume they sent Salim a check too. So I don't know if I don't even know if it's appropriate for me to ask Salim. Did they send you a check, and did you did they send him a check?
Oh, no, I don't. I only did not accept any money.
Well, in order to accept something, it has to be given to you, right? You can't accept something that doesn't exist. So if they didn't send him a check, they didn't send him a check. And so my assumption was just false. So it's I don't know that he turned money down from them. And those
I
are
don't-
two
I
very
don't-
different things.
You suggested that we should check with the PDC on these things, which I did. And that's how I noted that he did not. I just called him to verify, just to make sure.
Yeah.
That wasn't an error by the PDC.
Yeah. But we don't know if they sent him a check or not. Anyway, I don't know how relevant that is, but it's, go ahead.
Well, the relevance is every other candidate has not accepted off island money. You have, and this is one of the specific ones.
Yeah, I don't feel bad about taking money from the Victory Fund. I think it's a great organization. And I think there's things that, they have some great ideas about things we can do locally. A lot of people have guns in their house they don't use, you know, we can have a,
Hopefully,
we can sponsor a gun take back program, just to get the number of guns out of our community. There's things that they would like to see communities do, like police can sell those or they can destroy them. They would prefer to see police destroy those guns that they take back. So there are less guns in the community floating around. One of our friends was robbed and guns were taken out of their house on the island. And I was like horrified, you know, because the only reason we found them later is because, or at least one of them was used by someone not doing good things. So yeah.
They didn't take the safety precautions.
Exactly. I inherited like some really beautiful shotguns from my grandfather. I'm not a hunter, but they're family heirlooms. So they're sitting in someone else's gun safe because I don't even want a gun safe in my house. Not with my kids. So
So I have one question online that's been waiting to be answered. Is everyone okay if I ask it?
Yeah.
Carolyn Boatsman wants to know, what is it about your career and volunteer experiences that you believe can bring your leadership qualities to the Mercer Island City Council?
well, I think
I'm gonna
career,
repeat the question.
oh, sorry. You're having to tell me that every time. I'm sorry.
Everyone.
So she's asking, what about my career and volunteer experience
Experiences that you bring to the
demonstrates
Mercer Island.
leadership that you bring to the council? Okay. So one of my very first jobs was with Tree Mendus Seattle. That's TREE. And that was a community organizing group. And what we did was we organized neighborhoods to do street tree plantings. And if they had a park, they want to do a park cleanup and parks plantings. And we did that as a private contractor. We're nonprofit. So I was a contractor to the city of Seattle. So I've spent my whole life, you know, doing things like developing plans for parks and things like that. But I started out at this humble level, $30,000 a year nonprofit salary, organizing community. And then I kind of, after I went to, and then I worked for Friends of the Hylabos wetland, and that was the same thing. We had the Salmon Watchers program. So I organized those folks to do some citizen science. And then also organized planting parties. And then when I worked for the city of Seattle, I was the urban forester for the city of Seattle and helped form I guess I shouldn't say form the Green Seattle Partnership because that's more of a big administrative policy thing. But I wrote the first draft of the Forest Steward Field Guide. And I led, along with my colleague at Cascade Land Conservancy, which is now Forterra, Joanna, we led a whole bunch of forest steward trainings. And we built up the volunteers in Seattle Urban Forest from something like 10,000 volunteer hours a year to 50,000 volunteer hours a year. So I think that demonstrates leadership and results very specifically on the topic of parks and greening up our community.
I have a question.
There's a shy on the back.
Wait, is there anybody, sorry, you guys have been up last. So is there anybody out there who wants to ask a question? I'm gonna pop in here for a second. She's already asked one question. Okay. So, back here. Okay, fine, John, go right ahead.
Oh, wait, can I tag on one more thing to that too? Sorry, on
Absolutely,
leadership.
yes.
I am right now and have been for the last almost 5 years, been in a senior capital project manager position at King County. So in that position, I have to work with interdisciplinary teams. And we work on really challenging projects. And these teams include like engineers, planners, communication specialists, geologists, procurement people. I have to manage up to my management team, and I have to manage down to my teammates, and I have to get them communicating together, and I have to elevate their concerns up. So I think I've got that experience as well, and I think that will actually be really helpful in terms of bridging council staff relationships. I think I will be a huge asset on council in terms of working with the city manager, because I have experience on practical park matters and park maintenance matters. You know, I understand how procurement works. I understand how the limitations and the opportunities of government procurement and government hiring practices. And I think that's some of that like sort of government 101 that I think that the council could really use. You know, we have a lot of folks who are attorneys and bean counters and stuff, but we don't have a lot of people, and this tends to be ubiquitous across the political spectrum. We don't have a lot of people with government experience, and those that do have government experience, not a heck of a lot of scientists. So, you know, having that and having served in leadership roles, I think I can bridge a lot of gaps that are missing right now.
Okay,
Sorry,
you're
John.
Next, and then Victor has the last
Well,
question.
somebody-
I think there's only one question left after you.
Hopefully this will come to this. City of Seattle has mentioned, since you're a fish person, that everything from the stadium south, we have a huge homeless problem. And they monitor the water down there because of the storm sewer. Industrial. And there's been a huge spike in the pollution in the storm system, which goes right into the sound. And they're contributing that mostly to the homeless and leaky motor homes and the waste and everything that's being dumped into our storm sewers. How's part of that?
I think the question is, am I part of the sewage dumping into Georgetown? I have not actively dumped sewage into Georgetown sewers. Yeah, part of solving it, of course, you know, and this is why I think we need to address these gaps at the state level. We've got a lot of people, you know, if you look at the homeless population, it's not a monolith. You know, there are people who are hard on their luck, you know, and those are the people that these hotel rooms, you know, if they don't have addiction or mental illness issue, something like a hotel room and then a transitional housing thing, that's really going to help them. So that's great. But what we've seen is even in the best cases, only 30% of the people a year later are still in, you know, long-term housing. And I think what that's telling us is that this is a population who needs more supported housing. Right? We've got a lot of people who are addicted. We've got a lot of people with mental health problems. I heard from someone in the community, you know, just a very, very basic solution for her family dealing with the problem of a schizophrenic that, you know, kept, you know, falling apart. They moved him into an adult family home, and there was somebody there every morning to make sure he took his medication. He didn't need any extra support, and he is fine. He is free to roam. He is not causing problems. He is safe and comfortable and warm, and he is not suffering, and he is not creating suffering in the family anymore. And that's not going out into the community. So I think, you know, got to stop looking at this as a monolith and think about there are all these different groups. And I think that the most difficult group to serve, and this is where we need state and federal participation, is those people who have mental health challenges or drug addiction challenges that have not committed a crime, that do not want to seek services. It is an extremely tough population to address. For people who are chronic addicts, we have Ricky's Law. And, you know, I've talked to people in our own police department about that. And I've talked to people in different jurisdictions, and it is just not being implemented. There are available beds at the state. If somebody's a chronic addict, and this law was actually invented by a mother, you know, she came up with it, and she lobbied at the state because her son died from an overdose. And she said families need to be able to go in front of a judge and say, you need to put this person into rehab, and the judge can decide up to 90 days. 90 days is a long time. And this is part, getting back to the homelessness ordinance stuff. Why couldn't we have just put, we're gonna add Ricky's Law as an alternative to jail? I don't like, overnight shelter versus jail, those two options. I'm like, there's a lot of things in the middle, and Ricky's Law is one of them, and we should have that in there. Yeah.
So we're at the last question, and then we can mingle afterwards if you're
Great.
willing to stay.
Yeah,
if people
I'm
want
happy to
talk.
stay.
But thank you everyone online for staying, and we have one more question.
Okay, so we always close out with this last question. I think the only person who didn't get it was Deborah Lurie, who was our first one, first try at it. But we've asked all the council candidates, what's your spirit animal?
Oh my gosh.
And you have to repeat it for the.
What's my spirit animal? Well, okay.
Very important question.
It's a very important question, and I do work for King County, and we do a lot of equity work, and we do have some Native people that work with us, and some people in some cultures are offended with that question. So I'm going to put that out there. But if I had to think of, something that represents me most in the world, I don't know, kind of like a mama bear. I am incredibly nurturing, and I'm also incredibly protective. I'm big, I'm strong, and I love nature. I'll be a mama bear.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good.